everybody, this is Bob Iacchino along with Mike Arnold from Path Trading Partners. It is July 12th, and this is an afternoon Path Chat covering the futures market. You can see the VIX on your screen, a collapse in the VIX after the Donald Trump Jr. revelations have kind of been sifted through. There was an interview with Donald Trump Jr. The markets didn't seem to care much more than the initial spike that we saw yesterday in the VIX and the fall in the markets. From here on out, markets just rallied. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up just over 0.5%. The S&P 500 up about 0.75%. And the NASDAQ 100 up about 1.21%. So a good day for equities overall. Bank of Canada raised interest rates for the first time in 7 years. Central bank raised its overnight lending rate by 0.25 percentage point as expected, citing bolstered confidence that the Canadian economy has emerged from years of sputtering growth. Growth is broadening across industries and regions and therefore becoming more sustainable, the Bank of Canada explained in their statement. Stephen Pelosi, however, said he's looking beyond current conditions, focusing on where inflation will be a year or two from now. Here's a quote from him: reacting only to the latest inflation data would be akin to driving while looking in the rearview mirror. That's a statement from Stephen Pelosi. So he said they will remain data dependent and monetary policy is not on a predetermined path, clearly stealing the language from the U.S. Fed, of which we saw Janet Yellen's testimony today to Congress. Now, she stuck to the script. No real big deal. Nothing really new. We could say that she made good on her good cop image, basically sticking to script, saying that rate hikes were appropriate and they would be gradual, and saying that they would begin to reduce the balance sheet this year, and that would also be gradual. Although when you start to do the numbers on that, you wonder who's going to be in there to replace the money that the Fed will not be reinvesting into these particular securities. She talked about wanting to return to a balance sheet of treasuries only. She said additional gradual rate hikes would be needed over the next few years, but they wouldn't have to rise much further to get to neutral. Everything hinges on inflation. That's an uncertainty right now. She attributed lower inflation to one-time factors in the Q&A, for example, lower cell phone plan pricing and lower prescription drug pricing for last month. And she also talked about the idea that bumping up the Fed's inflation target was not in the conversation. So the way I read it was that balance sheet normalization will probably begin in September, and we're talking about December for another rate hike. Economic news: Chinese credit rose much more than expected. Canadian new yuan loans and aggregate loans both beat on their estimates. So that's pretty critical because in the face of all this, stocks are surging, but in the meantime, China dishes out more than an expected amount of loans. So you have this idea that potentially China could get a spike in their GDP as well off of that. So again, everything pretty much rallied. Crude oil, we got to talk about the EIA figures. You had two large draws again, but we also had a spike in U.S. production. U.S. production spiked. The market actually rallied up to the 47 area, fell off, and then rallied back up to finish up 1%. Metals: gold up slightly, copper down slightly, silver up the most of any of them, up about 0.25%. That's about it in terms of fundamental news. We'll see what happens tomorrow. The Senate tends to be, in my opinion, a little more in-depth in their questioning than Congress is. Congress does a lot more posturing, but senators tend to come across as a little bit more arrogant, so it's probably going to be a little bit more annoying to watch. But day 2 of the Yellen testimony, and then some pretty important earnings on Friday, so we'll see how that all works out. In the meantime, let me turn it over to Mike to let you know what he's seeing in the charts. Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Bob. So you can see VIX back down to 1030, almost dipping into the 9s today a bit earlier. Lows of 1008. So back to complete no fear in the markets. So what did the markets exactly do today? Well, we had a nice rally in the Dow futures and the Dow to new all-time highs, exceeding the old all-time highs, 21,508, where it was the old highs. New highs, 21,531, although it closed slightly below the old all-time highs, but this looks like the highest close, at least for the futures. So rally again tomorrow. We're looking for first resistance coming in at 21,531, and then here's your next projections higher. One of the things we give you at Path Chat, which not many other people do. 21,554, 21,601, and then 21,638 are the next Gann level projections higher. If we do pull back, very key support, 21,439. If that is broken, we'll be watching for 21,378 as the next level, and then possibly all the way down to 21,330 unless something major happens to shock the markets. If something did happen, then our next zone to watch for would be right around 21,250. Switching over to the S&P. S&P, no new highs yet. Still trying to get there. Got above our path trend line, nearly to the defining point on that trend line, which does come in at 2,445. So continue rally tomorrow, 2,445 first area, 2,447.50 next key area. If we can get through that, we might see a retest of the prior highs, 2,450, 150. Those are the key things we'll be watching for. On a pullback, first major levels, 2,428.50 to 28. Then we'll be watching for 2,424 to 25. If that is broken, we'll then be looking for somewhere down right around the 2,417. Over to the NASDAQ. Nice big rally in the NASDAQ today. As you can see, not quite to our path trend line. So continued rally tomorrow. We're going to be looking at minor resistance about 57.95 to 5,800. Then once that's broken, we'll be watching for 58.12, followed by about 58.20. Then on another really strong rally, 58.37, and finally a possible retest of the defining point, 58.52. On any pullback, first level support we'll be watching for is 57.67, then possibly down to about 57.31.50, and then on a very big pullback, 57.09 to 57.10. So those are the things we will be watching for in the NASDAQ tomorrow. Switching over to crude oil, nice rally straight up to the 50-day exponential moving average, our Gann level, and the declining path trend line, all providing very key resistance before falling back down. So rally again tomorrow. What are we watching for? Key levels, 46 to 46.02, first level of resistance, and major resistance right around this 46.42 to 46.50 area. If that is broken, you could see a pretty quick move to about 47 to 47.07. On a pullback, key support, you can see we've already had this line, this green line on here, Gann level for a while, which was key support today, 45.10. That's going to be support tomorrow. 44.95 next layer down, and then if we fall through all that, we'll be watching for 44.25 area. Finally, let's take a look at gold and silver. Gold managed to get a 3-day rally, just poking into our rotation zone, didn't quite make it to the end of our clear path for dropping back down. We have a lot of overhead resistance in here. We have the declining rotation zone, the 200 key Gann levels, and declining trend line all in here. So don't get over ambitious with your gold targets if you're trading it to the upside. 1226.50 is going to be the next target area up. Then we'll be watching for about 1230, then 1234 to 1237 are going to be very key resistance. On a pullback, nice support coming in around 1216, then we'll be watching for 1212, and on a bigger pullback, we'll be watching for about 1207 to 1206. Finally, over to silver. So for also nice 3-day rally off that flash crash that was set last week. Also hitting just above the declining rotation zone, which is a really good area of first resistance. So continued rally tomorrow. About 16 first level we'll be watching for it in 1603. If we do get above that, 1618, and then possibly 1624. Pullbacks, 1581 first level. Then we'll be watching for about 1568, then possibly down to 1558. Keep in mind that this is entering into a clear path and above a trend line. It is against the rotation zone, so you're going to have to choose intermediate targets in here, but it could easily continue to rally. That's all we have for you. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you for that, Michael. Thank you guys for watching, and please hit like and subscribe if you like what we are doing. We are Path Trading Partners, and we'll talk to you in the next Path Chat.